Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I'd like to talk through this Patrick Henry speech. This is his famous "Give me liberty or give me death" speech. Whenever we are doing rhetorical analysis, I always automatically think, we're looking at how effective is this speech. And what do I mean by effective? Well, I mean, how persuasive is it? And so for that, we have to go back to Aristotle and his framework. And you know that he refers to ethos, pathos, and logos. And I think it's important to begin with ethos because that is the way that the audience evaluates the credibility and trustworthiness of the speaker. Okay, so I think it's always important to discuss that first. And I think as a speaker or as a writer, it's really important to establish that first because if people don't think that you're trustworthy, they're not going to listen to your message. All right, so let's take a look. This is well established in the first paragraph. I'm going to assume that everybody has read the speech because I have these posted. So make sure that you have done that before you listen to this, okay? All right, in this first paragraph, he establishes his credibility and he shows great respect for his colleagues. He makes the point that he is going to be having a very different opinion than they have. He even says here, different men often see the same subject in different lights, and therefore I hope it will not be thought disrespectful, if I speak forth my sentiments. So he lets them know right up front that he disagrees, but that he thinks very highly of them. And he goes on to explain why he thinks it's so important for him to be honest about how he feels. He says the question before the House is one of awful moment to this country. For my own part, I consider it as nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. So awful moment, it's really a serious time. And so he feels that because it is such a serious time that he feels obligated to speak honestly and fully about his opinion. He even says that should I keep my opinions back at such a time, through fear of giving offense, I should consider myself as guilty of treason towards my country and of an act of disloyalty toward the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings. So he makes it clear that, again, the importance of speaking. He has to speak. If he doesn't, he's being disloyal to them, to the country, and to God. Now, he also mentions God in the previous sentence. I think that's worth mentioning because he knows his audience and he knows that they are believers in God, and so he invokes God early on and throughout the speech. Okay, so he establishes himself as a respectful speaker. All right, we go on to the second paragraph, and he starts off making this point that it's natural for man to indulge in the illusions of hope. Like, we don't want to deal with the truth. We might call that denial today, using a psychological coping mechanism, denial. When there's something really unpleasant, we would rather just not think about it. And so he brings that up. He says we're apt to shut our eyes against a painful truth and listen to the song of that siren till she transforms us into beasts. So this is an illusion, okay, an allusion. This is a mythological illusion. And hopefully everybody's familiar with these, the sirens of Greek mythology. And so if men heard the siren song, they would be captured by the sirens and destroyed. All right. And then he goes on in this paragraph. Let me come back to that illusion for a minute. So why does he use that? He's not explicitly comparing what the British are saying to being like the song of a siren, but that's what he's saying. That's really what he's saying. Are we going to listen to the song of the siren? Are we going to listen to all the false promises that King George is making us? Okay, that's what he's getting at. He also has several rhetorical questions. I want you to notice that throughout the speech, there are a number of rhetorical questions. And of course, those are not answered, by the audience, but in their own mind, maybe. Rhetorical questions lead us in a particular direction, and so that's why speakers ask these. Okay. We go on. This next third paragraph, there's a lot going on here. In terms of logos, he is making the point, 2 points. One is, hey, open your eyes and look around. Okay, the British are here. They're here, and they have ships here, and there are soldiers here, and they're here. And he asked the question, why are they here in such large numbers? You know, he even says here, let us not deceive ourselves, sir. These are the implements of war and subjugation, the last arguments to which kings resort. I ask, gentlemen, sir, what means this martial array, if its purpose be not to force us to submission? Can gentlemen assign any other possible motive for it? Okay, so he's saying there's no reason for them to have this large number of soldiers and ships and all this unless they are planning to use them to force us to do what they want us to do. Okay, so that is very logic-based appeal. Okay, look around, see what's going on. He also makes another point in this paragraph that if we look at the past in terms of how our requests of the British government of King George have been met, in other words, we need to look to the past to judge the future. And he says that at the very beginning of the paragraph. So the petitions they have filed with King George have not been fulfilled. And this has happened numerous times. And so he says, what makes you think that this is going to change? It's not going to change. Nothing that we have put forth has been answered in the way that we wanted. And so what makes you think that that would change? Okay, in terms of metaphor, there's several metaphors in this speech. He talks about the lamp of experience. Lamp is light, light is truth. He has that. He also talks about, a little bit later here, he talks about slavery and chains, the chains of slavery. Talks about the clanking, that's auditory imagery there. I do like this. This is one of my favorite lines in the whole speech in the next paragraph. He's lots of rhetorical questions. Okay, he says, let's see. Shall we acquire the means of effectual resistance by lying supinely on our backs and hugging the delusive phantom of hope until our enemies shall have bound us hand and foot? So we have another sort of metaphor here, the phantom of hope. So hope is seen as a ghost. It's seen as a phantom. So people want to have hope, but, if it's, it's a delusion, it's delusive, it's a delusion, it's false, and it's a phantom, it's a ghost. So he doesn't see that hope as being productive or real. Okay, again, lots of rhetorical questions here, and he asks a really important question, I think, in this paragraph. When shall we be stronger? Will it be next week? I mean, when are we going to be stronger? And he makes the point that, obviously he's thinking, well, we're not ever going to be stronger. And then he goes on and makes the point that, hey, we're already at war. We need to admit it. We need to face it. We can't escape it. It's here. Also in this paragraph, he comes back to God. There is a just God who presides over the destinies of nations, who will raise up friends to fight our battles for us. So he says God is on our side, basically. So that's meant to be encouraging. So I think that's pathos. All right, and then the last paragraph is the big finish. It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. We can't drag it out. Gentlemen may cry, peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war has actually begun. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What would they have? What can we do? And then he says, forbid it, Almighty God. I know what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. So that is a really famous line. So here's your either or. Give me liberty or give me death. In his mind, there are two choices, liberty or death. You don't have anything in between. And, we see that up here in this first paragraph too. You either have freedom or you have slavery, right? So that's the either or. Okay. So, in terms of pathos, how do we talk about pathos? I mean, I think that we have to look at the style. We have to look at the use of language. We look at diction. So the use of particular words to get some sort of emotional reaction from the audience. So when he talks about slavery, that's bound to have some sort of emotional reaction, right? And he uses it throughout. You can look at the adjectives that he uses. I think in particular, look, he calls liberty the holy cause of liberty. Again, we have the use of metaphor, and I talked through this delusive phantom of hope for you. So, we do have pathos here, and I think that some of the questions, even the rhetorical questions that he asks, build up and contribute to this very sort of emotional response. I think one thing you could talk about too would be punctuation. And we see throughout, like, let's look at this paragraph here. Look at all these exclamation points at the end. We must fight. I repeat it, sir, we must fight, and so on. And then in the last paragraph. So that's why I wanted you guys to be able to hear the speech from the Williamsburg Foundation, because, the person who delivers the speech tries to give it that historical sense so that you might be able to imagine how it was actually delivered, live. So again, I think you need to think in terms of pathos, ethos, and logos, and then what features that you can use that will help to make the speech more persuasive. I just realized I forgot to talk about something, so I'm going to come back for a minute. Back up in this paragraph, we have a lot of good examples of parallel structure. Look at this. We have petition. That means when you have the same grammatical structure and it's repeated next to each other. Look at this. We have petitioned, we have remonstrated, we have supplicated, we have prostrated, and we have implored. And then the next sentence includes that as well. We have. So that is repetition. It's also anaphora. It's parallel structure. Okay, and so speakers do that because it helps to build the point that they're making. It helps to emphasize the point that they're making. Okay, so I wanted to give you a couple of examples of that. All right, so I hope that this helps. Really famous speech. There's a lot there, no doubt. Okay, and it was so well delivered that it really, again, was the catalyst for the Revolutionary War. So a really good example, I think, for us. All right, so take care, everybody. I'll be talking to you soon. Bye-bye.